democratic, and that's the essential principle I think that we're observing today. So, so my name is Russell Rickford. I am an organizer with Black Lives Matter Ithaca. And Black Lives Matter Ithaca is one of the many organizations and individuals who are working to defend the Office of Human Rights. So we're going to have a number of different speakers talking about why the Office of Human Rights is important here in Tompkins County, and also talking about why it's under attack. So there has been a long pattern of abuse and disrespect for the Office of Human Rights. And this is Ken Clarke. Ken Clarke is the acting director, and maybe Ken can that we have to say. You know, I actually am relatively new to town. This is going on my fifth year here. But from what I've heard and what I've observed, there's actually been a long-standing pattern of marginalization of the Office of Human Rights. You know, most of us became aware of the crisis of human rights after the dismissal of Karen Baer earlier this year, the abrupt dismissal, and what many people felt was a disrespectful dismissal after her years of service. Since then, you know, officials have said one thing, and legislators have said one thing, but they have behaved in a different manner, right? They have said that they have an ongoing commitment to enforcing human rights in Tompkins County. They've said that they have a commitment to preserving the Office of Human Rights. They've said that they respect the work that the Office of Human Rights does and that its dedicated staff does. But in fact, their actions tell a different story. Most recently, the proposed budget for 2019 actually has defunded one of the most dedicated staff members of the Office of Human Rights, Xavier Rusk. Now, you know, we have to talk about, when we talk about human rights, we also have to talk about history, right? Because the Office of Human Rights is in many ways connected to the struggle for civil rights and the Black freedom struggle. You know, the Black freedom struggle was a diverse struggle philosophically and politically. Hey, Pete, thanks for coming. You know, some people in the Black freedom struggle emphasize civil rights. They emphasize legal equality. There are other people in the civil rights movement or in the Black freedom struggle who said civil rights are important, but they went even beyond that. They appealed to a broader power, which was human rights. So we have human rights not just because we are citizens in a society or that we are present in a particular society, but we have human rights by virtue of the fact that we are born and that we are human beings, right? That's based not just on the long Black freedom struggle, but that's based on the human struggle over generations and the idea that we are all born with basic rights, right, that cannot be violated. Sometimes we think that we come through generations of struggle, years of struggle, and we don't have to fight anymore, right? Sometimes we think that because we had a civil rights movement, or because we had a Black freedom movement, or because we had a Black power movement, that we no longer need to be in the streets, that we no longer need to agitate. And sometimes we feel that we can just have polite conversations, right, with the powers that be, and bring about the kind of social change or preserve the rights that we actually have fought so hard to win. Well, clearly we've learned in recent years that that's not the case. That if we don't fight for every single gain, every single advancement, every single hard-fought victory, that it'll be reversed and overturned, right? We've seen that with women's access to reproductive rights. Haven't we seen that? We've seen that with voting rights. Haven't we seen? We've seen that with immigrant rights, right? We've seen that in terms of our environment, and et cetera, and et cetera, et cetera. So now's the time for us to get in the streets, quite frankly, because officials don't seem to be listening to this message that we need and we demand effective human rights enforcement here in Tompkins County. The other thing that we need to do is we need to demystify human rights enforcement. That sounds like a very fancy, highfalutin or abstract phrase. But what the enforcement of human rights is really about, it's about protecting some of the most vulnerable members of our community, right? Now, a lot of times people try to suggest that Tompkins County or Ithaca is some kind of utopian, is some kind of bubble, right? It's some kind of counterculture paradise, right? It's some kind of pseudo hippie, crunchy paradise. And that's just not the case. We know that's not the case, right? Tompkins County has all of the problems, all of the economic problems, all of the social problems, all of the racism, all of the xenophobia, all of the misogyny of our broader society. In fact, in many ways, the reputation, right, of a progressive place, a progressive community serves as a cover. Doesn't it serve as a cover? It serves as a cover, as many of us know, as many of us who've been organizing in this community much longer than I have, right? Yes, officials like to point to the fact that there is an Office of Human Rights, right, as evidence of their commitment, or the county's commitment, to a social justice agenda. But the truth is that this office is being gutted. This office is being stripped, that the heart and soul is being removed from this office, right? And so I say it's not time for further conversations. It's not time even for the kind of polite petitioning on which people have relied in the past. Sometimes, right, sometimes you need to get into the streets and express your disapproval, to express your outrage, right, and to insist that the hard-fought gains, the hard-fought rights that we now enjoy not be stripped away, not be reversed. So we have a lineup of speakers, of organizers, of activists, of our neighbors, who are going to say a few words on the question of human rights. Dr. Clarke, if you were able to stay to the end, we certainly would like to hear your response to some of these concerns. Again, Dr. Clarke is the acting director of the Office of Human Rights. But at this time, I'd like to turn it over to one of the most powerful organizers in Tompkins County. He's one of the few, if not the only, black farmers in Tompkins County. He's a tireless organizer. He's a good brother. He's a kindred spirit. I want you to welcome your and my brother, our dear Rafael Lafonte. That's my praise. Thank you. I'm also the flag bearer. So I'm going to pass that on to Russell. I'm going to let him carry the flag. But we all have to carry the flag at some point. So that's right. I'm a farmer. See if I get a little more volume on here. Mic check.
We'll get another mic.
Okay. Wow. All right, well, even though Russell said I got all this power, all the power belongs to the people. Yeah, right. The power here belongs to the people. So when I say power, you say people. Power.
People.
Let's switch it up. People.
Power.
Power.
People.
People.
Power.
Power.
People.
All right, just seeing if y'all awake. Need a cup of coffee around this time, right? But I'm not here to talk about being tired. I'm here to talk about work, right?
That's right.
And that takes energy. So you got to pull that out from somewhere, right? And as hard as I work and as hard as everybody here in this county works, there's more work to be done. And this office here, let's be clear, this is the least of our protections.
Right.
This is the least of our protections. Right. And it is being stripped away from us. This is a place where we are lucky enough to have an office named for the explicit cause of human rights. That's very rare. You don't find that in most municipalities. However, even that, just the office itself, right? I'm not even getting to what's actually getting done, but just having an office in itself, this is very rare. But even that's being stripped away. So there's many things that we have to fight for in this community that are slowly being eroded and being taken away, right?
These are things that my ancestors, these are things that my parents, my grandparents have fought for and didn't imagine that I would be fighting for myself at my age. But here we are, right? And Ithaca, we have a lot of names for Ithaca, right? What's the slogan? Ithaca's what?
Gorgeous.
I'm gonna switch it up. I think Ithaca's racist. I think Ithaca's sexist. I think Ithaca's homophobic. I think Ithaca's transphobic. We have a lot of things that Ithaca is, but we like to say it's gorgeous. Right. So we are world renowned for our natural beauty of this environment. However, the human constructs within it, not so pretty. And Ithaca itself is growing. All we have to do is look right down the road, and we'll see that crane that's towering over most of the buildings across downtown, right? So this is development. This is new things that are going on in this town that have not been built before. We're making space, right? We're growing. Now, who are we making space for? Right?
Cornell.
Hey, name it, right? Who are we making space for?
Cornell.
That's right. So,
Not just for now, we're making it for rich, elderly, white people.
that's very specific. But we gotta name it, right? We're so used to these individual acts of racism and sexism and homophobia that we don't really get to address the systems that are in place that are upholding all of these things in the first place. Now, I say Ithaca's racist because I have proof, right? Ithaca, we've had over the past year, past 2 years, past 3 years, past 5, past 10, there have been violent racial incidents all over this town and all over this county, right? Luckily, I have not been part of one of those or subject to one of those violent outbursts, but it's only a matter of time, right? There's a lot of violent political activity that's been unlocked, right? People have been getting licensed to do the worst to folks. But we like to concentrate on these most violent acts, right? We had students that are beat up on campus. We had students that are threatened here within our own high school. But we like to magnify these individual ones, but we don't address the systems that are in place that are holding these things up. And that's what this office is supposed to do. This is supposed to give us a space to fight the discrimination when it comes up on a systemic level, right? That's much harder to address, and we can't do it alone. So we need an entire office. Hopefully, this was the job that it's supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be fighting all of these systemic incidents of racism, and they can't get it together to fight it on the way that it needs to get fought. And these are individuals, right? We're talking about there's plenty of individuals that come to this office seeking respite, right? From harassment, from violence, right? Somebody getting gross and rubbing up against them while they go into the copy machine, right? We have an incident right here in our own police department, right? A woman by the name of Sarah Cruz, who is, or rather, an officer by the name of Sarah Cruz, because they are openly gay and non-gender binary, right? And the police department could not make accommodations to this officer, and in fact, sought retaliation against them, right? So even within our own departments in our town that we pay for with our tax dollars, they can't handle an incidence of discrimination. So if they can't handle that against their own department, how are they supposed to help me when I have a claim against my landlord, right? When I have a claim against my employer? There's so many things that go on here in this county that need to be addressed. And as this development keeps pushing forward here from the center of town and displaces countless people to the outskirts, who is going to look out on their behalf, right? And that's just a place to live. How about a place to work, right? So even if you manage to hold on, and you get pushed out to the fringes of the county, you manage to get a job in here, who's going to protect you from racial discrimination? Who's going to protect you against sexism? Who's going to protect you against these things? Now, currently, if you have a claim when it comes to housing court, you can come, based on housing discrimination, you can come here to this office and file a complaint with the city. You can file a complaint with the county, you can file a complaint with the state and on a federal level. If this office did not exist, you would have to go all the way to Brooklyn. So if you have a case where you are fighting your landlord, who has time to travel 4.5 hours to go to New York City and partake in a possible 2-day hearing?
That's right.
Just to find out if your case will be heard.
That's right, time or money.
Right? So this is a war on the poor as well, right? Because who has resources to do these things? Right. We need this office to fight on our behalf, and we will not let this issue rest, right? So as much as this office, the power that this office has been granted, I'm granting the power to us here as the people in the street, as the people of Tompkins County. We will not let this issue rest. This will not go away. We will continue to fight on the behalf of marginalized people throughout the county. Might be some of us here in this very crowd, right? We will not let this issue go away. This cannot be brushed under the carpet, and this cannot be defunded, right? We need to put more money behind this. We need to put more enforcement, more teeth into this department. There's plenty of other developers. There's plenty of other folks who have been discriminating against citizens here in this county and non-citizens, right? We have folks who are constantly harassed on a daily basis because of their immigration status, right? So who's going to fight on their behalf as well? Because the office doesn't do that, right? All right. So thank you guys, and let's do this one more time. People.
Power.
Power.
People.
People.
Power.
Power.
People.
Power.
People.
People.
Power.
All right. Thank you guys.
People power. People power. Thank you, Brother Rockford. Thank you, Brother Rockford. All right. Next up, we have Brother Rob Brown, right, from the Workers Center. Workers Center is one of our cherished institutions here in Tompkins County, fighting for economic justice, fighting for social justice, fighting for true democracy. Again, we had to fight to build these institutions. We have to fight to preserve these institutions that we need if we allow ourselves to be divided and conquered, right? If we allow ourselves to be picked off, then the developers, the gentrifiers, the bosses, and other powerful interests ultimately are going to have carte blanche to do whatever they want, right? Which means abusing us, which means discriminating against us, which means pushing poor people, working people, vulnerable people out of Tompkins County, to the outskirts and out of Tompkins County, right? So we have to take a stand. Workers Center has been, and its dedicated staff and volunteers have been doing that for years. So it's my pleasure to bring to the mic one of the soldiers, Rob Brown. Thank you.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. A story about me. I am a bureaucrat. I'm a paper pusher. I navigate government systems as my professional skill set. I am also a civil rights activist. Things that I've done related to my identity is when I was living in Minnesota, I campaigned to amend the Minnesota State Constitution to include sexual orientation and gender identity. I came here, I immediately got involved in the passage of Local Law C, doing the same here in this county. Then I got involved in doing the same for New York State. Now, imagine how somebody who did those things responded a few years later when their supervisor came to them and said, "This is really out of my hands. I don't want to be having this conversation, but if you don't go back in the closet, I'm going to have to fire you." I choked, all right? I do this for a living, and I choked. You know where I came? Office of Human Rights.
That's right.
That's
They
right.
got me sorted out, all right? Without that resource, I don't know. Probably I would have finished my choke and gone into a full-on berserk rage and lost my job for doing something stupid, right? But this office is a treasured resource. Now, I am privileged to be at the Workers Center where my job is class war, all right? My job is leveling the playing field of all of us against the people who think that they are the master classes. They are not.
That's right.
We are done with masters.
We are
not?
done with masters. Good for you.
Every day, we work with working people who get abused, exploited, stolen from, discriminated against by their bosses. And for as long as our organization has existed, when it comes to workplace discrimination, we have had one key partner in this work. That's this office. They have been the only other ones in our area holding this line. They've been educators for us when we needed best practices guidance. They've been experts for navigating the particularly awful Division of Human Rights complaint process when people need to file a complaint with the government. Believe me, it is not easy. And now, what do we got? What do we got? Worker Center's trying to absorb the work that's being scraped out of the heart of this office in terms of employment. We do employment. We can barely keep up with what we've got now, and we're not even beginning to meet the need in this community. What about housing? You think Law New York can absorb all of those housing cases? No, they can't. What we need is a strong, vigorous, unapologetic local, community, and government commitment to people's human rights, that we are blazing the trail, that we are holding the line, and we will not tolerate exploitation in our community.
That's right. Good for you. Good for you.
That's right. Well, we're not going to tolerate it. We're not going to tolerate it. You know, a lot of times officials say, oh, we don't need a local human rights enforcement. It's enforced at the level of the state, right? Or folks can go to Binghamton, or they can go elsewhere. They can go down to New York City, right? You know, folks who say that, they tend to come from the classes. They haven't touched the masses. They don't spend a lot of time with working people. They don't know very much about the lives of working people, or poor people, or vulnerable people, or disabled people, or oppressed people, right? The reality is that people don't have the resources. They don't have the resources. They don't have access to the telephone or the fax machine or the internet or even the legal expertise that they need to really file a strong claim on behalf of their rights. So that is just another way. I mean, gutting this office is a way of subsidizing the big bosses. It's a way of subsidizing the developers. It's a way of clearing the path for the gentrification or the further gentrification of Tompkins County. So the question is, what kind of Tompkins County, what kind of community do we want? Or do we demand, right? Are we going to continue allowing our most vulnerable neighbors and our family members to be pushed out, right? To be pushed out of decent employment, to be pushed out of decent housing, to not have Section 8 honored, all kinds of violations, right? Or are we going to fight, right? This is not some kind of liberal utopia.
It's not. That's right.
Not. That's a lie. That's a cover for an agenda on the part of the powerful to have their way with this community, to transform this community in the same way they transformed these commons into a sterile center of consumerism, right? Rather than the original meaning of commons, which is about democracy, right? Which is about collectivity, which is about cooperation. So we're talking about the very heart of democracy. This is the age of Trump. Do we need fewer? Do we need fewer human rights? Or do we need more human rights? I can't imagine, faced with the assault on human rights that we are now under at the national level, that here in Tompkins County, which professes again to be so progressive, that we would be going backwards on the question of human rights, that we would be targeting some of the most dedicated staff members in the Office of Human Rights, people who have spent their free time, their time off the clock, counseling and helping working people and vulnerable people who've experienced discrimination, and tenants and others who have been discriminated against in this county. So at this time, I want to bring to you one of our most powerful warriors. This is a sister who has been organizing in this community for many years. She needs no introduction. She's well known to all of us. And as a matter of fact, there's a very important event going on this weekend. There's a hair and self-care festival going on this weekend right here in the Commons. So what that means, we're going to turn it into a real Commons, right? We're not going to turn it into this sort of sterile center of consumerism and hyper-capitalism. We're going to turn it into a real center of collectivity and of nurturing, right? Because that's what working people do. You know, who are the most important people in our society? Is it the parasites, right, on Wall Street? Is it the people who make money off of other people's misery, right? Or is it folks like you and me, folks like our family members who care for people, who provide sustenance?
It's our farm workers.
That's right. That's right, folks. A lot of folks who are unemployed, they still work hard every day, right? They care for people. They fix people's food, right? They clean for people, right? They care for people's bodies. This is the kind of work that the most valuable people in our community do, and we have to protect them. We have to protect them. And if we don't do it, no one will. So I want to bring to the mic our dear sister, Jamila Simon.
Woo!
Hi, everybody. I wrote down a few notes, and I'm going to try to keep it together because everybody that's among us is not family. I just want to say that the Office of Human Rights has provided a safe haven for so many families. I do my work proudly, and most importantly, at West Village Apartments is one of the most, I would say, insecure places that we have in our community. If we can't do for the most vulnerable, then we're not doing enough here in Tompkins County. And I just want to share on the heels of Rob sharing about his experience with OHR. Of course, I served as the former chair of the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission, but I am a resident, right? I was a part of the working poor. And when I came to OHR in 2015, I had a dream to open a business right here on the Commons. And you know what I experienced? Closed doors, time after time after time. There were folks that were like, that's great. Show me your resume. Show me your work plan. And you know what I did? I asked some of my white counterparts to go to those same places and find out what their experiences were going to be like. And you know what happened? Every single one of them was able to attain a lease at all the places where the doors were closed for me. And the only open door that I had was right here at this office to be able to get some legal expertise, for folks to be able to tell me, you're not crazy. What you're experiencing is discrimination. Not that I didn't already know that. But at a point in time, I'm saying to myself, how could there possibly be all of these closed doors? People don't want Black businesses here on the Commons. That's very clear. And that's not going to change anytime soon. And so I don't want to kid myself about what experiences other people are having if that's the experience that I'm having. I work with the most vulnerable residents in our county. Folks, when they're filling out an application to apply to housing in other apartment complexes, the second that they see West Village Apartments, they're like, nope, we don't want you. You're going to be bringing roaches. You're going to have problems. There's going to be domestic violence. There's going to be the police at your doorsteps. And the problem is that that's a stigma against that community. There's a flyer right here in the OHR window called Dignity Garden Party. Just this Sunday, we had a beautiful offering, and there were many folks that are here in the crowd that were a part of that activity. We put together a shed. We encased a garden space so that we can grow food for 235 residents at that apartment complex. And you know what happened? People came out. They greeted one another. There were Cornell students that came out. There were LACS students that came out. Their principal came out and put together a beautiful offering. BLMI was there. There were SURJ folks that were there, Groundswell, and just an outpouring of love and community. Does everybody here have a cell phone?
Yep.
Everybody comfortable with your service provider? Because the thing that's going to happen next, because these doors are closed. They may be temporarily open, but these doors are closed. Because the people that are standing inside right now that work for this office are not able to do their job.
We see you in there. We see you.
I see them clearly because these are my friends, these are my family, but these are also residents that have their own struggles, that are stressed to the max. So we're talking about working in communities where people are already stressed and stretched to the max. So make sure that your cell phone providers are working, because you're going to start to receive phone calls like I receive phone calls, like the Worker Center receive phone calls, like Law New York does, like Family and Children Services, because people are going to be stressed to the max because there's no place to go. Now, what has happened, and I'm sure, Brother Clarke, you can talk about this, is that there's a kiosk. I don't know about you, but I don't even do self-checkout at Target.
No,
because unless
that's
I'm getting
right.
a discount,
That's right.
unless I'm getting
That's
a
a
discount,
job.
there's no reason for somebody
There's
else that
no reason.
can perform a job.
There
There's no
you go.
reason for me to substitute them by a computer and an
That's
animated
right.
system.
That's right.
So
'Cause
that's
people
not what
gotta
I
work.
signed up for. That's not what I pay property taxes for. That's not what you pay taxes for.
That's not
So
what
we need
pay
to
taxes
demand
for.
that we get the services that we deserve.
Good
And
for
that
you.
is a human
Good
touch.
for you.
That is someone
Good
that
for
has
you.
legal expertise
That's
working in the
right.
office. In fact,
And
Xavier
Xavier
Rusk,
has-
who is a paralegal aide,
Yep.
is actually
That's right.
qualified
Good
to
for
run
you,
this
Jamal.
office from soup to
Good
nuts.
for you.
And many of you guys out here know that.
Good
But
for
that's the mark that we need to make in this community. He is overqualified to run this office.
Overqualified.
And so the doors can be open. But instead, our county ledge decided, and they decided unanimously, behind closed doors, that it was okay to dismiss the director, who again, Karen Baer, was overqualified to be working in this office. That's the reason why we were pumping out so many cases within the state division. And you know what? The county said, oh, this doesn't look so great for us
No.
to be pumping out all of these exquisitely done complaints. That is the truth of the matter. And don't let anybody else, including Martha Robertson,
Tell
your
you
county chair,
different.
not mine, but your county chair,
Yep.
tell you otherwise.
Yep.
That's a complete lie, and it's a
Lie.
farce. In fact, the 3 complaints that I filed as a part of the process of looking for a business to run on the Commons, all of them found probable cause. So that should tell you something about these
Yep.
experiences that are
Good
here.
for you.
Now, I don't know, Brother Clarke, what kind of experiences you have, what kind of legal expertise you have, but I would like to know what's happening. And why would you choose to have a kiosk where people can shuffle papers and try to figure it out on their own? There's some things that I do that are DIY projects. They're painting. It might be hammering a little bit, but this is not a DIY project to file with the state.
That's right.
Absolutely not.
Not a DIY. That's right. Good for you.
Workers Center, Law New York. I hope that you guys get a budget increase because there's a false sense of affluence that goes around here. And right now, housing is already stretched. Families are already stretched to the max. And some communities are going to continue to remain stuck because of this. And it's a shame because there's ripple effects to closing one office that people think might be little, but it's extremely powerful. What it says to me to close the doors of the Office of Human Rights is it's going to add to my community work. I'm already getting phone calls from people that are like, I don't know what to do. I'm over here at this job and such happened. And so maybe I'll just quietly leave and move on and do something else because I came to the office and they can't do anything for me.
Can't do
So
anything.
how is that possible that people are having those experiences? You have an open door, but it's just for show.
Yep.
And that's not acceptable. We have to all remain reactive and not proactive. And that's not a place that I want to spend my time or energy. I'd love to be proactive. I'd love to set things up so that the next person doesn't have to have the same experiences that I've had. And instead, we have to be reactive. We have to be coordinating ourselves. We have to be blocking off the sidewalk so that people can't even flow and go to yoga, which I don't really care that much about, but so keep it moving. But the fact of the matter is that we remain insecure and not progressive. And we're re-triggering folks. So there's some folks here that work in mental health. Get yourselves prepared and strapped up and make sure you have a large cohort of folks because we're continuing to trigger folks. After you've had a terrible and egregious experience, then you're going to come somewhere and share that experience with who? Between me, myself, and I, if you're sitting at a kiosk. And so that continues to re-trigger folks. It's a good thing that Ithaca is modeling its imperfection because we have a lot of room to grow into being progressive. And losing OHR means that the state division will eventually have less work. Not more work, but they'll have less work.
Less work. That's right.
My recommendation would be to promote Xavier Rusk to running this office if they're not bringing back Karen Baer. He is completely capable of running OHR. It tells me that the doors are closed because we don't want to share and build assets within our community where we're not able to promote people that have the talent and the abilities and the skills and that are overqualified for positions. It tells me that there's a problem when this department has the most number of people of color and there's only, I can count them on a single hand. But every single year, it's on the slate to be defunded and to be closed.
That's right.
I've been here now for almost 14 years. And every year the topic of discussion is OHR. How is that possible? We have departments that sleep. Let's get on Department of Social Services. What are they doing? I don't see them. We have to combat the chair, our county chair, Martha Robertson. She shared the last time when we were at the county ledge that her granddaughter is black, and that that's supposed to be an excuse for her to be relieved of her duties. She should be relieved of her duties as county chair, but because you have a black grandchild, that doesn't relieve you of any duties, because that child will die prematurely. That child will die prematurely. Yeah, I see some of you like, whoa, how is that possible? Yes, black people in this county die prematurely. And part of that is because of the stress that's induced in living here in this racist place. And part of that will be because OHR is closed. I don't want to be in a county where we pay lip service to protecting local businesses as usual and local interests. I want people to live longer lives. I want them to be able to fight every day and to really dismantle and tear apart injustice. And it's time. And there's some folks here that can provide some answers. So Dr. Clarke, before you leave today, I think you should provide some answers about what the office is or is not offering.
That's right. Thank you, Sister Jamila. You know, the other day I was walking through the airport. I was walking through the airport and I came to a food court in one of these remodeled sections of the airport. And the food court didn't have anybody working in it. It was all automated. All you needed was your credit card. You picked out the food for yourself and you ran your credit card and you were on your way. You know, then I passed a bar. It didn't have a bartender. It just had a screen set up. You punched what you wanted, you know, what kind of drinks you wanted. You ran your credit card and you were on the way. Well, that's what capitalism thinks of us. We're not human beings. We're not three-dimensional people with needs, with vulnerabilities, people who are oppressed, people who are discriminated against. We're just a credit card, right? We're a MasterCard. We're a Visa. How could we possibly model an office, one of the last institutions that we have, to fight for our basic human rights, that recognizes and understands our humanity, with people who have been working in this area for years and understand the dynamics of our local community? How could we model that kind of office on a kiosk, right? On a self-checkout, on a do-it-yourself, as Sister Jamila said, right? That makes no sense. Like, that's an outrage. That's an insult to the very idea of human rights.
Human rights.
And let me make it clear. Sister Jamila was right. It's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of life and death. And if we don't believe it, right, continue to pay attention to the realities of people struggling every single day to make ends meet. You know, struggling against oppression, struggling against indignity and disrespect, right? It's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of life and death. You know, today, what's today?
It's Tuesday, 9/11.
What's the date?
9/11.
It's 9/11. It's 9/11. Right? It's 9/11. Now, let's think about 9/11 for a second. And I'll be done in a second. But let's think about 9/11. Quite often this day, or this date, is manipulated. Isn't it manipulated? This date is manipulated in order to gain our consent for war after war after war after war after war. And what are we told? That if we just consent to these wars, that we'll be safe, that we'll be secure, that we'll have nothing to fear, right? But you know, over the last 16, 17 years, we've gotten more unsafe. We've gotten more insecure. And it's not necessarily because of some shadowy enemy out here overseas. It's because of the people that we work for. It's because of the people that we rent from. It's because of the ruling class of this country, right? If we want to be secure, if we want to be safe, then we have to fight for democracy and human rights right here at home, and stop spending all of our resources trying to murder brown people overseas.
At home. Amanda and Pete.
Sister Phoebe, you want to speak? I'd like to bring up. Next up, we have someone who is actually running for public office at this moment. You know, it's election season. It's election season, and electoral politics is an important part. Electoral politics is an important part of our struggle for justice. But in fact, electoral politics is only one part of the struggle for justice, right? And in fact, in my mind, it's a small part. The much larger part is what we're involved in right now and what we continue to commit to every single day going forward, which is to agitate, which is to demand genuine justice. But I want to bring before you someone who's running for state senate, a powerful voice in our community, Amanda Kirsch-Gessner.
Thank you. I won't take much of your time because I know there are plenty of other voices that need to be heard. I'm here today to show my support for human rights locally because we don't have them. People are being displaced. My friends, my neighbors, they're moving clear out of the state because they can't afford to live here. And the real measure of a community is how well the least of us is doing. And I'm here to tell you, they're not doing very well right now. That's right. Homelessness is on the rise. Our friends and neighbors of color are being rapidly displaced. And Cornell University students are masking it because of their quote-unquote diversity. Initiative. It's a problem. And unless we talk about it, nothing's going to change. This issue was brought to my attention when I was trying to organize some local activists to meet with county legislators to discuss issues that were important to us. And this issue became so central to the conversation that it totally fell apart because our legislature doesn't want to act.
Doesn't want to talk.
In fact, they want to cave to the will of the state. And that was a huge antagonizing force in my bid for this office because unless we change things at all levels, guess what? Nothing's going to change. I know that if I don't use my privilege as a member of this community to advocate for the people who are not here, there are plenty of people who don't have a ride to get here. They're busy working their second or third job right now so they can make the ends meet in our community. And traveling around this area and learning how people think of this as some idealistic place, I laugh and I break it down saying, yeah, our unemployment is low, but we have the highest underemployment in the state and one of the highest costs of living. If we lose this office, we're taking one of the most important tools out of the toolbox for the most affected people in our community. If they can't come here and get assistance navigating a state process, guess what? We fail. But there's a lot of hope right now because I see so many of us here, and guess what? We are the solution. And I know that as a community, we can create alternate models if we fail to protect one of the most important agencies that our local government has provided. So I'm here to stand for human rights. I'm here to stand for all people in this community because they deserve a place in this community. Black lives do matter.
Woo!
Thank you to the Worker Center, to MRC for coming out and showing your voice. It's great to see Family and Children's Services here because you are the organizations that will be picking up the slack for the lack of government attention. I see SURJers in the audience. I see Action Network. I think we have a lot to be very proud of in our community, and we, all of us, we can do this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. Next up, I want to bring up a good friend, someone whom I admire greatly, someone who has struggled in our community, has organized in our community for a very long time, and it hasn't always been easy. In fact, recently, the office that she has led, the organization that she has led, the Multicultural Resource Center, has come under attack. Has come under attack despite the tremendous work that it does in collaboration with and in cooperation with grassroots forces throughout the county. But this sister has remained strong, and she's remained a light and an inspiration for many of us. So next up, I'm pleased and I'm proud to bring to the mic our dear sister, a real kindred spirit, Fabina Colon.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. So I guess I want to introduce myself first and foremost as a mother, a resident that has been in this community for over 25 years. I never thought I would say that. And not necessarily as a leader of an organization, because I feel like when I look around and I see the folks that are here, I do see the usual suspects. And I'm wondering, where are the people that really need to be here?
Yeah.
And, you know, what is it? Why is it that they're not here? Are we doing the job we're supposed to be doing to bring people out here? And I think we all know the answer to that question. And I just want to bring up something that is going to be a bit, I'm just going to speak from my heart. Historically, we have witnessed that the laws that were created here in the United States were not created for certain people.
That's right.
First and foremost. Secondly, I think about the land that we stand on, right? And still kind of wondering if we don't know how to work with the fact that this land has been brutally stolen, the fact that land has still not been returned to the first peoples that were caretakers of this land. How do we then consider ourselves activists or social justice organizers or whatever if we can't really, think about how we work with those dynamics? We have failed. And I'm standing here because I value and understand tremendously the need to have advocacy for people that need it the most, right? Because a lot of our rights have been taken away. A lot of, as I mentioned, the policies and laws are not here to protect people that look like me, Indigenous people, Black people, and we continue to almost be in this place of like catching up. And frankly, as I'm tired of that, I'm ready to call out, whatever you call it, the elephant in the middle, in the room. And we're talking about a massive campaign that has been developed in this country to divide and conquer. And that is exactly what's happening. And it's happening in multiple levels. And it's not just happening to this office. It's happening in multiple spaces and places, all the way from business spaces to nonprofit organizations, and obviously in even our government, our own government offices. So how are we supposed to have faith? I have very little faith. And frankly, I feel like this pattern of behavior that we are experiencing is nothing new. And I respect everybody who has been up here and understand the need that we need to react. We do need to come together, and we do need to come up with solutions for how to stop this campaign from continuing and just getting bigger and bigger. At the same time, I feel like it is time for us to use our creativity and build what we want to see and stop depending. Why are we still depending? I don't want to keep depending. We have the power, people, power, and I know that, you know, it is said so many times that we do need to come together, but we need to come together in a conscious mindset. We need to come together and acknowledge the different injustices that exist and stop brushing racism under the rug and, you know, starting to use this whole intersectionality as a, you know, Olympics of, you know, who's the most oppressed. That is what we need to stop. And so how do we come together and start building the alternatives that we want to see? Because historically, what has happened? We have seen this happen before. Like, what has happened? And I don't want to anticipate the worst, but we have to be ready for the worst. And we have to be creative, and we have to start using these powers in different ways. We have to start using our creativity, our wisdom that we carry from our ancestors. And we need to put that energy and that knowledge and expertise to use differently. So I am here in support of continuing to have an agency, a group that is there to provide advocacy and support to people that need it the most. That is part of my role as well in this community. I am in full support of that. But what we need to do is really start connecting the dots and looking at, like, basically the roots of why this pattern of behavior continues to happen. So I invite you all to do that. I invite you all to really think about your own role. And I wonder, you know, right before I came here, I literally was asking people in our office. We had a group of people in the office, and I said, who's going to come with me to this rally? And most of them were like, nah, you go, we'll stay here. Right? And so even for myself, I'm thinking about, like, okay, what is it that we need to say as a community? How do we need to strategize better to make this issue relevant and relative to people so that they understand that our lives are at stake? And I invite all of you to do that. And maybe next time, bring 5 of your friends, right? Because we do see the same people all the time, and that goes for me too. But again, like, how are we connecting the dots? How are we looking at our processes and looking at how, you know, when you, even using Karen Baer as a great example, right? She was let go because of insubordination. And then it becomes personnel matters and issues that we are not to be made aware of because it's confidential. But at the same time, think about the processes. Has anybody ever been at the hospital and you see people that are, like, literally in pain and they're waiting there for half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours? That's what it makes me feel like, right? Because the processes that are in place are there precisely to exclude and to keep business as usual. And that is a problem for me. And we need to change that because processes are so important. I think policies are all connected, but I do feel like if we're looking at professionalism and how an office needs to function and how a director needs to function and what their role is in the community and what they can or cannot do because they get funding from this, you know, grantor or funding from another grantor, how does that make sense for an organization or an individual to do their work with dignity? It doesn't, because our processes and policies don't allow for that. It is very limited. People are pigeonholed, and they work for who at the end of the day? There are people, the system, there are people who are doing what they're doing because just follow the money. And so thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm just inviting everybody to really just, let's think deeper, let's think more strategic, let's come together a little differently, and let's figure out how we also include those populations that are that we keep saying that are the most negatively impacted by these systems of oppression, and work with them to build that self-empowerment that we all need to build, but also to think differently and come up with alternative solutions to address issues such as the issue that we're here standing for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabina.
Thank you, Sabina. Thank you, Sabina. Very important messages. So don't think about the symptoms. We got to get back to the roots. And also, we need to go beyond the usual suspects. We need to do the kind of grassroots organizing in Ithaca and Tompkins County that's actually very difficult to do. We always have to remember, and I think this is part of the basic ideal on which human rights are founded, that the most vulnerable people, the poor people, working class people, oppressed people, folks who face discrimination every day, they're also some of the most powerful people, some of the most creative people, some of the most intelligent people in our society. So it's not necessarily a question of organizers going to the grassroots, going to the masses, and bringing them. Rather, it's a message. It's a message of organizers trying to catch up with the masses, trying to catch up with the grassroots, finding ways to harness the tremendous power, the tremendous ingenuity, right? Because it takes ingenuity, it takes grit, it takes strength to make ends meet, right? When you're under all kinds of pressure every single day. As we said, to work multiple jobs. Right? A lot of people aren't here because they can't afford to be here right now, that they're on the job, that they can't afford to be here right now because they don't have transportation, they don't have childcare, right? They have multiple obligations. So we have to find a way to harness that tremendous intelligence, that genius that lies in the grassroots. At this point, I wanted to open it up to folks who have had experiences with Office of Human Rights or who've had struggles with basic human rights, basic dignity, right here in Tompkins County or beyond. I want to just give an opportunity for folks to say anything that they want to say, because this is really what democracy is about. You know, we're constantly told that it's about showing up at the polls and pulling this lever or that lever. Maybe that has its place, but folks, I'm going to tell you, that's one small part of democracy. That's one small part. We have to be willing to fight, and we have to be able to express in public our vision for a decent society. So I just want to know if there are folks who want to step forward and say a few words. Sister Phoebe is one of the long-standing members of this community. She's here from Harlem, New York. She's a fighter. She wants me to get off the mic so she can say it.
Hi, yes, I'm from Harlem. And you know we gotta take what we want.
That's right.
Especially when we have people who like to talk. And we love them for that. Thank you. Thank you so much. From the day you got here, Russell, you haven't stopped yet. Thank you. I mean, stop in a good way. Anyway, I'm here because I gotta come out when it's to support people who I know have a good heart, have been doing what they're supposed to do, and then once again, here we are. Here we are, fighting for what is rightfully ours, right? And that's pretty sad that we should even have to stand here today to do this. But this is indicative of we've been doing this for over 500 years. It's not new. It's not new. It's new to a few people because Trump got voted in and now y'all feeling it. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing because now you know we need you more than ever, right? Like, I've been to the human rights and I came here and I was real excited because this office was here and I knew that was what was happening to me in the job that I was working at was not comfortable and didn't feel right. but I didn't know where next to go. And I came here, and actually, they couldn't do nothing for me because they couldn't. I guess they had to go through some other channels anyway. But what they did do is let me walk out of here feeling like a woman, feeling like supported, feeling like they really cared, right? Even to the point of checking up on me just to see am I okay, right? And that gave me more power and energy to keep doing what I'm doing, right? And I've seen this office do some really fabulous things. I forgot the woman's name, and she was bringing everybody in here. But what I want people to think about is, and what I want people to remember is that as poor people, many times what we need happens in a way that we don't like how it feels. However, and I know a lot of people is not feeling right about what's going on right now, but what it's doing is letting us know that we still got work to do. Letting us know that business is as usual and that we got to come together more than ever, right? And yes, I see a lot of people who are here and everything, but I also see some new faces. And I want to thank y'all all for coming out here and supporting and being here and letting, because I'm out here because of Jamila. I love her to pieces. She's just one of them. But I'm out here because I know if this is important to her, then this should be important to everybody. So thank you.
Brother Jay.
I just have some questions, Russell, so please stand right here. I know, as you said earlier, the Office of Human Rights is very important in these times. Black Lives Matter, of course, is a national organization dealing with issues that are occurring across this country. Hardly a day, certainly a week passes that you don't hear about some kind of criminality associated with being black while people are in their homes, while walking down the street, and so on. And as Rafa indicated, that's happened here. So I have to run soon, so that's why I'm asking you these questions. What is it that we need to do next to support the Office of Human Rights in terms of ensuring that it is here to support Black people, gay people, poor white people, dealing with all the issues that we've stated? What's the next step? What are the action steps that everyone here can take to express support for this organization?
Thank you, Brother Jay.
First and foremost, let us be very clear. We demand that Brother Xavier Rusk, a longtime dedicated staff member in this office, that his position be preserved, that it not be defunded as the current proposed budget suggests.
Excellent.
Beyond that, I think that there are a number of different demands that, in fact, at a time when the heart and soul is being stripped from this office, when this office is being gutted, we need to reverse that situation. We need to beef up the Office of Human Rights. We need to expand its protection powers, right? We need a comprehensive human rights law for Tompkins County, and we need the power to enforce it for all areas of discrimination, including racism, including racial injustice, right? We want this office to be fully funded and, in fact, expanded so that it has the resources, the human resources, as well as the mechanisms to do the critical work to make sure that Tompkins County is actually a safe and secure place, that people can live here with dignity, that people can live here with all of the rights that they deserve and that they should enjoy. Those are the minimal demands. As Brother Rafa said, the Office of Human Rights, they work hard, but this is a minimal protection against the kind of onslaught that we're actually facing. So this is not the end of the struggle. This is the beginning of the struggle, right? But what we will say is that we will not allow the basic protections that we have fought so hard over the years and generations to gain. We will not allow them to be torn away. You know, I think it's not coincidence that right across the way we see the marquee of the State Theater, and Sister Joan Baez is actually performing tonight in a sold-out performance. Now we think about the history of Joan Baez, right? Politicized over the course of the 1950s and 60s, politicized in the civil rights movement, politicized in the anti-war movement, politicized in the human rights movement herself, a longtime activist in the human rights movement. But I don't think it's coincidence that Sister Joan Baez is in town tonight to bring a message of justice to us. So as we draw to a close, I want to hear from you. I want to hear if there are any questions. We have Brother Clarke, who is the interim director.
Tell people to apply to be a human rights commissioner.
One step is to apply to be a human rights commissioner. Another step is to call the Office of Human Rights and to talk about, and to in fact to demand answers about what are the steps, what are the processes that people need to go through in order to file a claim here in Tompkins County, or to file a claim with the state, right? What kind of assistance are they getting? I think it's very clear we won't tolerate a kiosk.
No.
We won't tolerate a kiosk.
No.
Right?
No.
As the means that vulnerable people, that people who are stretched to the limit, the people who are struggling, as the means that they are provided to file a claim, that is not going to cut it. So, are there people who want to raise a question, and you can direct it either to Dr. Clarke, but you can also direct it to the county, and you can also direct it to the people themselves, because ultimately we hold the power.
Thank you, Russell. My name is Neil Woolley. I'm an advocate with the Workers Center and with Loaves and Fishes. My words today are my own. I work with a lot of people that have health issues, physical, mental, emotional. I brought people here for help. I had a person who had a service animal that his landlord didn't want him to have anymore. He was already living there. We had to fight to keep it. Where am I going to bring someone? I brought them here. If you put a kiosk in front of someone and tell them to fill out a form on a kiosk, that depends on their ability to understand and do that. Not everyone is. I work with people who don't have the physical or mental capacity to do that kind of thing. Are you going to come out of your office to help them? Is someone from the county legislature going to come down here to help them? I know, because I know my challenges. It's not easy. And I'm a well-educated person. Okay. I think if we took the county legislature and put them in front of the kiosk and gave them a sample form of a case that this office has worked on, and asked them to fill it out on a computer, and then told them that it was going to take them God knows how long before anything was acted on, because it's got to go through the channels, that's a problem. I had someone who was about to get kicked out of his place. I brought him here. This office generated the letter, and he was able to save his place. These are the kinds of things that people deal with all the time. As an advocate, I have people that come to me. They can't get help on their own. They don't have the ability to do it, and when they try, they're not given the respect that one would hope for. Someone in your family or anyone's family can come down with a health problem, can come down with a physical or mental health problem, and all of a sudden they have challenges that nobody knows how to deal with. When I was in high school, we had our eyes blindfolded or put in a wheelchair and spent the day learning what it was like to live in a situation where you had those kinds of limitations. I don't see them doing that now, but I think that that's something that the educational system should look at doing. I think that our legislature should try that. And I think our legislature should be given the access to that form now and asked to try to fill it out. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. September 18, there is a county legislature meeting. I think it's 5:30 p.m. October 1st, I believe that's the budget meeting, right? That's the meeting where presumably they will finalize or further discuss the proposed budget, which includes further cutbacks to the Office of Human Rights. I think for those of us who are asking, what do we do next? What's the call to action? I think we have to show up at these meetings. And here's a very important point. I think we show up at these meetings certainly to address our elected officials. But more importantly than that, we show up to these meetings to embody our outrage, right? To express our demand for fundamental changes, for genuine social justice in this county and in our society. We show up at these meetings to create a new sense of morale. I mean, Sister Fabina was talking about the sort of flagging spirit of our movements that we need to re-energize. When we gather collectively, this is part of what we do. We draw strength from one another, right, in order to challenge the system. So it's not simply about addressing elected officials. It's about gathering strength from below. Now, in closing, does anybody have any direct questions for the Office of Human Rights? Dr. Clarke, who's the interim director, has witnessed most of our gathering. And I imagine he has some words to say in response, but I want to make sure that the focus is on the people, that they have an opportunity to ask the questions that they need to ask. What kind of experience do poor people, do working people, do vulnerable people, do oppressed people have when they come into this office at a dark time because they're being pressured by their landlord, that they're being discriminated against by their boss? What kind of experience do they have? Do we seat them down in front of a kiosk, or do we give them access to someone who has real expertise in the law and real experience with dealing with these issues on the ground? What kind of experience can the Office of Human Rights promise or deliver? Any other questions for Dr. Clarke, for ourselves? Come on up. Come on up, because we can't hear you. And put this right next to your mouth, closer than it's comfortable.
Thank you. I guess I don't know if I ask you or whoever if there's a phone number to call, because I live in Elmira and I work here. But if you're interested in organizing people around this issue, who is the person or body that we're putting pressure on to keep this service and this office open? And what is that phone number or person?
The phone number is 277-4083. And you can talk directly with me.
So you work for the Office of Human Rights? Okay, cool. So is there, so for keeping the budget open, for keeping these positions open, there's not someone above that we're leveraging to do that?
I can address that in short.
Okay, great. That was just all I was wondering.
He's going to say it again when he takes, Dr. Clarke's going to say it again when he takes the mic. Do you want to come on up?
I'd like to ask Dr. Clarke what your vision is for the best possible Office of Human Rights for Tompkins County.
Thank you. Great question. Other questions?
Hi, my name is Fran. I'll make this quick. I came to Tompkins County in Ithaca in the 90s. I was a Tompkins County Human Rights Commissioner during that time when the office was strong, when the office was powerful, when it helped people with investigations and did a lot for the people of Ithaca and Tompkins County. I want to know why the county doesn't think it's important enough to push back on the state, who says that they don't want that role anymore for this office, and or if you push back and they still say no, we should still have people in that office like our paralegals, like our strong employees who can help people who are going to have a lot of trouble dealing with the bureaucracy and the long, challenging way and effort it takes for somebody to file a human rights claim in the New York State Human Rights Office. So if you could address that, I'd appreciate that. I'm sure everyone else would too.
Thank you. Excellent question. Other questions?
I just have a clarifying question. Young lady asked who she should contact if we want to direct our advocacy efforts, and you mentioned yourself in this office. Are you saying that it is your decision to defund this position? And if it's not your decision, then why are you directing us to you for our advocacy efforts?
Thank you for that question. Other questions?
Hi, Dr. Clarke. I wonder if I got here very late, so I don't know if this was already asked, but is there support from your office for a comprehensive local anti-discrimination law? We have local law C, but it only covers sexual orientation, and it was amended to cover transgender identity. Now that actually influenced the state human rights law to include transgender identity. Why not expand local law C to cover race, class, age, nationality, religion, disability, so that we have local protection, we have a legal standing for really protecting and enforcing and promoting local human rights, and we're not dependent on the federal government or on the state government for that. Would you support that expansion of local law to be comprehensive for all protected identities? Because that's the basis on which we can actually make some systemic changes about how to enforce and protect those human rights locally, and we won't be dependent on the state. And I guess I really want to put in a pitch for people turning out around the budget hearing. I understand that the office is funded for $320,000 plus a 2% increase, and when you move, if you move to the office of the aging, that there'll be some savings on the rent in this place. It'll be more accessible. That all seems like it might be possible. But what are we going to have for the $320,000 in our tax dollars? What are we actually getting if we don't have services that actually assist people when they're in crisis and they need somebody to help them think about their options and to file those complaints in a way that gives them the best chance of the state finding probable cause for their complaint? That's an important stage, because when you've lost your apartment, you've lost your job, and people are picking on you, you need somebody who will listen to you respectfully and help you sort out what is the best basis on which to file a complaint so you get the best chance of actually getting some action from the state. And if the state isn't going to help us, let's have local control so that you could actually conciliate without having to have the state even involved in it. You could actually solve things on a local level.
Raises an important point. One of the important points was about the location of the Office of Human Rights, because they're trying to relocate the Office of Human Rights, right? And again, they're trying to give us a commons, a sterile commons, a commons that's been stripped of any kind of human services. That's really about capitalist exchanges. That's really about a market exchange, right? That's really about consumerism. We don't need another hipster bar or another way to run up our credit cards here on the commons. And what we need is some commonality. What we need is some community. What we need is some collectivity. What we need is some caring, right? And this is what human rights is supposed to represent. Any final questions for Dr. Clarke and for ourselves and for the community? Dr. Clarke, I want to invite you to come forward and perhaps respond to some of these questions.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming out this afternoon. Your concern and your care for human rights and for the most vulnerable in our community is very important. And it certainly is very important to me in terms of my own personal commitments and the work that I understand myself doing in this office, in this interim role. I want to clarify a few things in response to the questions. I'm going to try to address them as much as everything that people have asked as much as I can. First, I want to make clear, the office is not closing. The office is not being defunded. I'm currently working on the budget that will be presented on October the 1st, and there are no budget cuts in that budget. How the money will be spent and how other monies will be reallocated will be addressed in that hearing on October the 1st. But I want to say very clearly and as honestly as I can, the office is not closing. The office is not being defunded. The budget is not being cut. That's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, I want to address the matter of this soulless kiosk. The reality is that we have set up a space in the office for people to file their complaints, but I am sitting with those people when they file their complaints under this new process that we have established. I spend up to about 2 hours with each individual I have met with so far. Within the last week, 3 complaints have been filed that have been sent directly to New York State. Given the fact we do not have an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with the state, to be able to do our own direct processing and filing and investigation of claims, we are doing our work in a different type of way in the effort to advocate on behalf of the most vulnerable in our community. What we are doing, because we don't have that MOU, and by the way, I want to say parenthetically, and we talked about this in a presentation with the Health and Human Services Committee of the Legislature last month. There are 13 county offices of human rights throughout New York State. Only 2 do direct investigations and have memorandums of understanding with the State Division of Human Rights. In Suffolk and Nassau County. Each of those counties have populations of over 1 million people. They get far greater caseload than what we have seen here in Ithaca, and what the patterns reveal over the last 2 decades in terms of data that we have in terms of human rights cases. So 11 of the 13 offices, many of which do not even have the advantage of having the current full-time staff of 4. Some are one-person operations. Others are run by Human Rights Commission of volunteers. One office addresses human rights issues from their Human Resources Department, an employee that is assigned to that. You also should know that out of those 13 counties, the budget for this office is the 3rd highest in New York State among the 13 county offices. I say all that to say that in our effort to help the most vulnerable among us, I have sat with people this past week who have filed complaints regarding employment, persons who feel that they have been unjustly terminated, a person who is being threatened with eviction from his apartment. And we sit with those people. We do not leave them to their own devices. I make sure, as much as possible, that what they fill out in terms of the application, and it is a process that takes about 1.5 to 2 hours, that application is filled out as clearly and as legibly as possible, that is able to convey the story that they are telling about their difficult and painful and often traumatic experiences. So there's a human dimension with this. This is not a soulless kiosk. This is the service that we are rendering to our community, given the tools that we have, given the parameters under which we have to work, given the fact that we cannot do investigations as has been the case in the fact that we have been without an MOU for over a decade. And so this is what we are doing in terms of advocacy for our community members. And we will follow up with them in relation to their complaints with the state, which takes some time for the state office to address. More often than not, it is the office in Binghamton that's the office that will ultimately get in touch with people and determine whether or not probable cause is found. The state office. We will follow up, and if they have not heard from the state in a timely manner, we will follow up with the state and try to be their mediator to ensure that they get a hearing in a timely way as much as possible. And while this does take time, it is a process that takes far less time than going through the court system. So I want to clarify that, and I want to assure you that people are meeting with an individual, with a person, with me as the interim director. And I am seeking to give them the best care and invest in empathy and concern and a listening ear and ensuring that they tell their story for themselves as best as possible. That's what we're doing right now. There were a couple of other questions. I think Laura had mentioned something about local law. As the county attorney, Jonathan Wood, mentioned in the meeting last month, there are challenges in terms of the administration of a local law, which would require having in this office, for example, to be able to fully implement and to administer that law. You would have to have an administrative court judge. You would have to have a couple of lawyers and others, which is the reason why, as was emphasized in that presentation made last month, that state law, which broadly covers comprehensively most of the major, if not all of the major categories, protected classes related to race, class, gender, gender identity, gender expression, and the like. That law is the law that is being utilized at this juncture in lieu of or in the place of a local law. And that has been the guidance that we have been given in terms of what people can appeal to when they have experienced discrimination, when they have had their rights violated, their personhood violated. That is what we appeal to, and that is what we have been utilizing at this juncture because of what it would involve to be able to have in place the apparatus, the administrative framework to be able to implement a local law. So, in response to that question, that has been what we have come up with at this juncture. There may be some other. If I've missed something, someone asked, please remind me of what it is so I can address it as best I can. Yes.
I asked what your vision for the best human rights office is.
I'll answer that in two ways. One, as an interim director, in the broad sense, I'm laying the groundwork for a vision to emerge. For something to emerge in the process. I mean, given the fact I'm in this in-between role at this point in time. Ideally, in terms of personally, what I would hope is that this will be an office that would be understood as doing advocacy on behalf of others in a way different than has been the case, different than what has been the popular and the community expectation for this office based on what its history has been, based on the fact that it was able to do its own investigations. We don't have that capacity right now. So we have to work with the framework that we have in place and to advocate on behalf of others to do community education and outreach work and to expand that work and to bulk up that work in a greater way. This is what we can do, and this corresponds with what other county offices are doing, in which by and large, through the benchmarking we've done with in terms of looking at what each of these county offices do. By and large, with the exception of Suffolk and Nassau counties, the focus is on education, outreach, advocacy. There are those that, in addition, do training, anti-discrimination work, and the like, work addressing issues of diversity and inclusion and the intersectionality of injustices that people encounter, in particular those who are the most vulnerable in our society. So that's the way I would answer your question. I have been conducting a community needs assessment, and I've been meeting with a wide spectrum of folks. And we've been trying to get meetings with a number of other people who we're trying to get a response to, and some of who I'll be following up with by phone. That assessment will continue even after the report emerges that highlights the findings from that assessment that will be produced probably within the month or so. So that's how I would answer your question.
Hola. I'm Xavier Rusk. I'm here as a private citizen, and I wanted to point out a couple things. So I came to this office in 2015, and that's when I started as a paralegal aide. It's my understanding that prior to that happening, Karen Baer, the former interim director, actually pointed out to the legislature that we do not have a memorandum of understanding with the New York State Division of Human Rights. Under Karen Baer's leadership and direction, what we did was we changed how we process complaints. Because we could not take the complaints, do the investigations on behalf of the state, and then submit a probable cause determination to the state for a hearing, what we did instead was we changed to a pro se litigant sort of model. That's to say that somebody would come into the office, they would explain the type of discrimination that they're facing, that they're experiencing, and then this office would draft the complaint for them. Basically, what that did for folks was that helped them change their story, their experiences, from something that was just this horrible, awful thing that they'd gone through into a legal document. This is what the law is, folks. The law is a tool that you're supposed to use in order to balance the playing field. At least that's what the human rights law is supposed to do. When you are experiencing discrimination because of disability, because of race, because of age, because of national origin, what is supposed to happen is that you're supposed to be able to put forward a complaint that says that I'm Black, but I wasn't rented to, but my white counterpart was. We're both similarly situated. We're both similarly situated in terms of like we both have the same income, we have the same credit, we have the same references done. All of these things. There is so much more to the things that you have to ask a person, analyze, look into, in order to see how much a comparator is actually similarly situated to someone. And that's just if you're going to look at a disparate treatment theory. There's also a disparate impact theory, which deals with when there's a facially neutral policy that has that discriminates against an entire class of people. This work is not easy. No. You need attorneys. You need paralegals. Ask Ray Slaughter. Ask Law New York. Ask Central New York for housing. I don't know anybody who's not a lawyer or who is not a paralegal who's been practicing administrative law that can get involved in this process and help somebody. I've been practicing administrative law for 5 years. I went to Cornell University. I have a Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology with a concentration in inequality. Folks, this is what I went to school for. I also spent time at TC3 studying paralegal, and before I was eventually hired by, guess who? Legal Assistance of Western New York, Law New York folks. The people who trained me how to take what is someone's situation and turn it into a legal argument so that they can then take that to the state division and tell them, I am being discriminated against. So that once they get the state division to sign on to that, what happens is that we're bringing down a lot of the state's power to correct what is unequal and what is unfair. That was my job. Now, this was the work that OHR was doing. OHR, like This stuff has all been on public record. This stuff has all been explained to legislators. Go back and look at the record. It's recorded. One of the things that I really want to point out are a couple of the stats that have been ignored. As reported in the enforcement data, the office was receiving between 400 and 500 points of contact. The receptionist, through her brilliance, she had to go. Through her brilliance, actually managed to whittle that down to about just under 100 issues of discrimination that someone may file on. Those people were then interviewed by the Paralegal Aide. When someone first approaches the office, they're in a state of distress. You need an initial meeting. You need to understand what it is basically that's going on, and they need an opportunity to vent.
Yep.
Now, once that initial meeting has happened, you need time to process it yourself, so you make sure that you're understanding what it is that they're saying. But then you need time to look at the law and put together their fact pattern with the legal fact pattern to make sure that the things that they're alleging has happened, the documentation that they have to show that discrimination took place, all of those things have come together beautifully into a complaint. Now, that all sounds easy, but guess what? There's another layer to this. Part of how you create a complaint also deals with legal strategy. What information do you share? When do you share it? How do you share it? Yep. For the purposes of eliciting from the respondent an answer that will show that they, in fact, are discriminating against someone. I mean, this is the stuff that people go to law school for years, then start practicing and start litigating. And then once the answer is written, mind you, the respondent wrote the answer. So the respondent is thinking, oh, this is exactly how I show I'm not discriminating. You then have to pick apart every word, and sometimes what can be a 20-page answer with 50 pages of exhibits. And you have 10 days to pick that apart. And to get that in order into what's called a rebuttal. The rebuttal is very key, because the rebuttal is how you show that what the respondent says and what you wrote actually agree, that you were discriminated against. Now, all of this is extremely difficult. And that's the very, very first step to getting a probable cause determination. Once you have a probable cause determination, the state division will then assign an attorney to prosecute, not represent you. And while some people may say that it's semantics, the important difference between someone who is prosecuting versus someone who's representing you is that when you're being represented, there's someone that's representing your interests, that's trying to push the envelope and push the bar and get you what you need. Honestly, at this juncture, if we're going to only stick with the state division, then yes, we do need an attorney that's going to do advocacy and that's going to get the state division to get moving on these issues. And this is sort of where we go, okay, there's now a prosecutor who's pushing the interests of the state, which is sometimes to get things resolved. Even if that means you get a no probable cause determination when you do have probable cause. Even if that means that gets your case dismissed. But anyways, what I'm getting at is that this work is not easy. It is complex. It is difficult for people who do not have a legal background to do. It is difficult if you are a layperson and you're trying to go through all of this. We need this office to be stronger.
That's
Point
right.
blank.
There you go.
We really do.
There you go.
Because like Russell said, this is the beginning. This is not the end. This is the beginning.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Brother X. Brother Xavier. I love to hear Xavier talk. Half the things that Xavier said sometimes I can't fully understand. I gotta go home and look it up. But that's why Xavier is so important to us. It's very rare to have someone who matches the technical knowledge on one hand with the heart, with the generosity, with the commitment. And I think that Xavier embodies those qualities. Look, nobody is perfect. Nobody in the Office of Human Rights or outside the office is perfect. But we know that there are comrades who've been struggling with us in the trenches, and Xavier embodies that fighting spirit. This is why we demand that his position be fully funded. Woo! You know, we're often told, and we're drawn to a close, and I'm going to bring on Brother Rafael Ponte to wrap us up. But we're often told, we're told here in New York, we're told throughout the United States and in many parts of the world that we have to do more with less. Aren't we told that?
Yep.
That we're told that we have to accept an austerity budget, that we have to accept an austerity lifestyle.
that we're not going to have the kind of social services, that we're not going to have the kind of social safety net, that we're not going to have the kind of basic protections that we fought so hard for in the past. But at the same time, when the developers come, when the big developers come to transform our skyline, are they told they have to do more with less? No. Right? Is there austerity for the big box stores? Is there austerity for the bosses? Is there austerity for the crooked landlords, the slumlords? Right? Is there austerity for all of these elite and privileged people who are trying to transform the very character of our communities of Ithaca and of Tompkins County? So the short answer, the short response, I think, from the people is it's not good enough. No. That we demand more. I'm sorry if somewhere in some other county, in some other community, that they've accepted less, that they've accepted fewer protections. But that's not the way it's going to go down here in Tompkins County. That we refuse to accept that we refuse to accept less, that we're going to continue to fight, that we're going to continue to come here to the Office of Human Rights, that we're certainly going to show up at the county legislature meeting, at the budget meeting on October 1st, right? Again, not necessarily to address the elected officials, but really to embody our outrage, that these basic protections are being stripped away. And so in closing, I want to bring to the mic for the final time our dear brother, one of the few, if not the only black farmer in Tompkins County. Here's a brother who helps to feed us every single day. My dear beloved brother, Rafa Ponte.
Thank you, Russell. Every introduction, it sounds like I'm gonna drop an album or something, right? But I do have to feed my goats soon, right? And I think we all have places to be. We have family to take care of. We have jobs to go back to, second jobs in some cases. We have children to go home and feed. So I do want to keep us focused. Let me ask a question. How many of us care about human rights?
All of us.
Come on, now, you got to give me more than hands. That sounded weak. How many people care about human rights? All right. So Reverend Clarke was I appreciate you taking the time to answer the questions and even come out the office to be able to address the crowd who is so passionate about human rights. But let me ask another question to the crowd. How many of you who are so passionate about human rights have been contacted about the possible vision of this office? Has anyone heard of a forum to come into to be able to be heard and address, put your community concerns forward? So I would say this process is flawed. In order to create a new vision, I say the new vision is right here on this sidewalk. The new vision is catching hell from all the different traumatic experiences that they're catching in this county. And we need to give them a voice, and we need to have them at the table. And I would say, as a member of Black Lives Matter Ithaca, we haven't been contacted to be able to be at the table.
Actually, that's not true. I did contact actually a meeting that brought together, and we're still working on this. SURJ, Black Lives Matter, Action, and a fourth organization I cannot recall right now. And I have not heard back, and I know people are busy. So I'm going to get on the phone and call people. Well, take my number. I can do that. I can do that, and I think, and I appreciate you saying that. At the same time, we know with any process, we cannot meet everyone's needs, and sometimes there are ways in which to engage people, not simply by sort of the net being cast from here, but also by casting the net in the opposite direction. I say all that to say, I am more than willing to meet with anyone over anything and to meet with you directly and to speak with you as honestly as possible in terms of what I understand to be the work of the office and to hear your concerns. And so I'm saying that as an extended invitation to anyone. Our number is a public number, and my email is available on the county website. I will extend myself to you, and I will just ask that this would be a reciprocal process.
All right, folks. So you heard it. I would say that meeting is not enough. At this point, meeting is not enough. How much money is human rights worth? Right? How much should be spent on human rights for our county? Apparently, we're the third in the state in the highest budget. We might need to increase that because it sounds like we have a lot more cases that are not being heard. And you choose your words very carefully. You said that the office is not being defunded, but you also did not say a word about job security for the folks who have been here working.
That's right.
Right? That's not
right.
guaranteed. Right? Apparently, the kiosk has a soul instead of being soulless. And I don't know about the zeitgeist in the machine, but I think we need to do much, much, much better. And if the office needs more strength in terms of finances, then we need to make a demand as a people to put that onto our county so that can happen. But in terms of offering as a vision more education and more outreach, that's not what anyone here has said. We said we need more enforcement and protection. And that's the job that the office used to do that is no longer able to do because it does not have a memorandum of understanding. Now, if that's the problem, then that needs to change. But we're asking for more enforcement and protection for the most marginalized people of this county. And if that is not being met, I encourage everyone here as a next step, be insubordinate, right? That is what Karen Baer did. Be insubordinate. We will not be complicit with any plan that does not include the needs or the wants of the people. And the needs and the wants of the people is more protection and more enforcement, right? So I know this is an election year, right? We're in the middle of midterms. And a lot of times for me as a person of color, it feels like summertime, right? And I say that, how many people want to go to the beach in the summertime, right? We all enjoy ourselves on the beach, right? Yep. How many people want and need that beach body, right? You want to be seen and you want to be admired for having put in all the hard work that you've done, get that beach body for the summer, right? There's something to inspire too, right? The pinnacle of health, right? You're looking good. I demand the same thing for this county. I want us to look good. But I know that if I start working out in the summertime for my beach body, it's not going to happen, right? So politicians that are fighting in an election year for the rights of people who have been fighting this fight for a very, very, very long time, we're not going to get to where we need to be. This is an ongoing effort, right? So we're not looking good right now, right? But we're still at the beach, y'all. We need to come out to the beach, and we need to get to be as healthy and as a resilient community as we can possibly be. And right now, we're missing the mark. So what I'm asking for everyone here is to hit the gym, all right? Get in the dojo. We need to be insubordinate, and we need to not be complicit with any power structure that does not put human rights first, right? A budget, people over profits, always. We should not be putting a budget before the needs of the people in this community. So I say that, and I want Russell. Where did Russell go? All right. So in general, right, do not be complicit with whatever's going on. If it don't sound right, don't smell right, don't eat it. All right. I say that as a farmer. I mean that. You can catch something, right? And we don't need to catch anything here. We need to be very healthy. So Russell is going to talk about some very specific things in terms of next actions, dates, and things. Just as a quick reminder before we all head out today. So thank y'all very much. One more time, people, power. People. Power. People. All right.
All right, Brother Rob. I already told him the dates, man. October the 1st for the budget meeting. There's also a county legislative meeting, I think, on September the 18th. The most important message is that this is not the end, that this is the beginning, that we will stay in the streets, that we will return right here to the sidewalk outside of the Office of Human Rights, until we get the kind of protection of basic human rights that all human beings deserve. And that's it. I will see you on October the 1st. People power.
And it's September 18th as well.
Okay,
People
Russ.
power, people.
We'll be there.
Thank
We'll
you.
be
Have a
there.
good night.